this one too. Beautiful, my goodness. She's divine, she's beautiful, she's dimpled, she's moon-esque, Mars-esque. She's everything we've ever needed. This one is a really long time coming, and I'm super stoked to share this final recipe of the sourdough focaccia. It's very similar to my ciabatta recipe that I shared 2 weeks ago, as in it's 80% hydration and it's enriched with olive oil, but it's even more easy to make because you don't need to do a final shaping. You really just throw in a cast iron pan and kind of forget about it, and that's the best of it. So let's make some cast iron sourdough focaccia. So for ingredients and special equipment, it's super straightforward. For the ingredients, it's just my favorite flour, which is King Arthur's all-purpose, just the right amount of chew, the right amount of protein. So if you can, get that one. We have some diamond kosher salt, some olive oil, and also we're gonna talk about toppings later, but this is kind of the perfect time for you to express yourself. For the special equipment, all we really need is a scale, a thermometer, and one cast iron pan. I have a 10-inch, 11-inch, and 12-inch. I'm just gonna use the 11-inch today, but whatever sort of average looking cast iron pan you have in your home is gonna do just right. So you just gotta make sure that's seasoned. And if you don't know how to season a cast iron pan, just let me know, and I'm just dying to make a video of that. So cast iron pan, and that's really it. And I'm gonna get to the first step of making that focaccia. Okay, so this specific way that I'm gonna do this recipe for the timing is very much working for me because my apartment is really hot. We're in LA, so things are moving super quickly. But for your apartment, wherever you live in the world, and whatever temperature it is on the day you decide to bake, is really gonna change the way this goes. So really make sure you listen to you pay attention to the visual indicator of this recipe as opposed to only focusing on the time indicator. So first off, it's about noon here, and I'm gonna feed my starter to create a levain. So my starter, I took it out of the fridge last night, and it's nice and room temperature right now. And we're gonna proceed to feeding it with water and flour. So first off, 100 grams of water, but between 80 and 85 degrees, okay? So I'm gonna put that in my container first. I have a quart container here. So starter, I'm only gonna do 15 grams. So then when the starter is in, we're just gonna dissolve it in that water. So once it's dissolved, we're gonna add our 100 grams of all-purpose flour. And you don't need to really overwork that. You're just gonna make sure the flour is fully hydrated with the water and it's nice and mixed and you don't have like a dry corner. And I'm also gonna bring it down just so it's easy to see on my container when this has fully tripled in volume. I'm not using a ton of starter for how much I'm feeding it. So what's happening with this is the starter is a bunch of bacteria that feeds on the sugars and the protein that's in the flour and then turns into CO2. And the more the starter struggles to process the sugar, the more it's gonna create large and strong bubbles. So actually I keep thinking about my doctor. When I broke my arm, my doctor said, this is gonna be your toughest arm because it's had to struggle fixing itself. So now it's this toughest arm you have. Anyway, but essentially the bacteria are processing the sugar that's in the flour, creating big bubbles and creating big and strong bubble the more it struggles. So I hope that made any sense. Did it make sense?
Yes.
We're gonna do, this is where it's at, double, triple, and we're gonna get back to it when it's nearly tripled in volume. Here, it's gonna take 6 hours about, but in some other places it could take up to 12 hours. So see you in about 6 hours. Okay, so it's been almost 6 hours and our levain is nearly tripled in size. Just before it's tripled in size, we're gonna do this part called Autolyse, which is gonna be to hydrate the flour with the water. We're doing that because this is essentially a no-knead bread. So in order to get as much gluten strength as possible, we wanna hydrate our flour with water ahead of time. So, off we go. In our bowl, we'll do 440 grams of that all-purpose flour, and then we will add our water. This is 350 grams of water. The water is at between 90 and 95 degrees. And I'm taking a spatula, and I'm just gonna mix everything until there's no dry clumps. It should only take a few minutes. So this is looking extremely shaggy and looks nothing like bread, but there's no sort of dry bits around. Make sure you scrape off the sides. And then that's it for now. We'll just cover that with a nice damp towel. 30 minutes is the minimum you want to do. Hydrate your flour. So see you in 30 for mixing the final dough. So 30 minutes has gone by and now the flour is fully hydrated. So I'm just gonna uncover that, and to this, to create the final dough, I'm gonna add 10 grams of salt, I'm gonna add 35 grams of olive oil, and I'm gonna add 160 grams of the fully tripled in size levain. We're gonna mix everything, and we're mixing that by hand, and because this is a dough that has olive oil, it's super easy to mix by hand. So we're actually gonna do the pincer method. I'm gonna encase the levain in my dough. So simply just take it and bring it to the middle. So it's all in here. And now we're left with this beautiful thing. And we're gonna pinch until we create these ribbons on one side, and pinch again to create these ribbons on the other side. And now we're doing the same thing where we're gonna kind of bring everything back to the center. I'm gonna flip it, boop, and I'll do the pinching thing again. So we'll do that for about 6 minutes until you really just can't feel the levain anymore, you can't really feel any grains of salt, and you can't really feel olive oil kind of leaking out of it. You'll see once it's gonna start sticking to your hands, it's gonna mean it's all fully mixed. So it's been a few minutes, you can see now it's starting to stick to my hand and it's starting to stick to the bowl. And then this is all going in, just like that. Ta-dam! Cast iron focaccia! We're gonna do what's called the bulk fermentation, which over the course of the next 3.5 hours, we'll do a series of folds. A fold every 30 minutes, and we'll do 6 folds. I'll do the first one with you, which is slightly different because it's in a cast iron pan, but it's very, very, very easy. So all I'm gonna do is I'll see you in 30 minutes, and I'm gonna keep this covered with a damp cloth, nice at room temperature, and that's it. So actually 30 minutes has gone by, and I did tuck my towel underneath because for the first hour or so, the dough is so sticky that you just wanna make sure the towel is tight.
Trying to do the tuck.
Mm-hmm. It's got ways to go, but we're gonna do the first turn together. So I'm using a bowl and I'm taking my wet hands, and I'm gonna lift as high as possible and sort of elongate the dough and create some elasticity in it while adding some air into it. I'm gonna do another time. And as the process kind of goes, the dough is gonna get tighter and tighter, but you still wanna make sure you work it just so it really stretches out. One more time on the other side. So I'll do 3 sort of maneuvers per. And I wanna tuck the front a little bit and tuck the back, just to kind of start creating some tension on the dough. And we'll do that 5 more times. I'll show you a cute little montage, but you'll see the dough is gonna start getting tighter and tighter and kind of resist the stretching, but you still wanna make sure it happens. So cover it back with your little towel. So at this point, the 6 turns are completed, and our dough is looking really good. So now this is actually gonna go rest for 12 hours in the fridge. Before doing so, I just wanna grease up the top a little bit because it might proof up to sort of touching the plastic wrap, and I don't want it to stick on it, so I'm just gonna grease that, which I'm gonna do to 9 p.m. until 9 a.m. tomorrow. And that's going in the fridge. See you in the morning. Back in action. Our focaccia has nearly doubled in size. Actually, we'll keep that plastic wrap. What we want is for it to double and a half in size. So if we do a poke test, we can see that it leaves too much of an indentation for you to know if the poke test is working, if it's proofed enough. You would press your finger in it and it would bounce back within 2 to 3 seconds and barely leave a dent. If it leaves a dent, it's just a very, very soft dent. This is not proofed enough. For the last hour, we're gonna turn on our oven at 475 and I'm gonna proof it on the oven covered to really get that last blast of warmth in the focaccia to get it super bubbly. For me today, I'm going a super, super simple route. I'm just gonna do rosemary and crunchy salt. You could do cherry tomatoes, you could do pesto, you could do cheese, you could do herbs, or you could do nothing at all. This is time to express yourself. So during this hour, I'm gonna pick about half of a cup of rosemary leaves and I'll see you in an hour. Magic has really happened here. So now it's officially time to uncover it. And look at this. This is the wiggle you're looking for. At this point, it's time for dimpling, which is the most exciting part. And also, by now, typically I'm just too tired and hungry to weigh everything, but you do 35 grams of olive oil, just about a quarter cup. And make sure you do a little bit in your hands. And for the dimpling, you really don't want to be shy. You want to go for it. All the way to the bottom of the pan. And once we've done sort of one direction like this, look at these beautiful bubbles. We'll turn it around and do another direction. If you see any big bubbles, you can leave them or you can pop them if you don't like them, but this is mostly an aesthetic thing. It's not gonna really change the flavor. I'm personally just gonna do a nice amount of crunchy salt and also a generous amount of rosemary leaves. I'm gonna just do another gentle dimpling just to make sure the rosemary is not just burning on top and that some of them is kind of like in some canyons and other ones are on top of mountains. And oh my god, look at this, it's so exciting. Time for baking. The oven is fully preheated. We're gonna start by baking it for 15 minutes right on the floor of the oven. And why I'm doing that is because for me the heat comes from the bottom of the oven. So I'm gonna put it directly on the bottom so it gets as quickly of a heat rush as possible so that the cast iron pan gets really nice and hot and you create a crust at the bottom. And after about 15 minutes, I'll open it and I'll actually put it on top shelf for 5 to 10 minutes just to get a maximum amount of color on top. And then once it's fully beautiful golden brown, it's ready to take out. Don't look at this one, this is our swab. Look at her. The only way really to tell if it's finished, if it's cooked, is with the actual color. So once it's golden brown, it's done. But we did another one, we had a swap. And Matt dimpled this one. And this one's a cacio e pepe version, which turned out amazing. Same recipe, everything, just with cheese and pepper on top. It's almost like a tease because it looks better than the rosemary one. All right, so at this point, wait for however many minutes you're physically capable of waiting, and then we'll slice into it. Oh my god, it smells so good. Very, very light. She's light, she's easy to cut. Oh my god. Clearly, I didn't wait for it to cool down. Oof. The elasticity and the chewiness you get from that flour, from that slow fermentation, and that airiness you get from just that last hour you do on the stove, and then the through and through crust. The through and through crust you get at the bottom, the crispiness that remains all the way through the focaccia because you've used a thick cast iron pan is really, really outstanding. It only yields one focaccia. I made it that way because I don't imagine everyone has a ton of cast iron pan, but if you do very, very possibly double, triple the recipe and make more focaccia, I think it's great personally to make one at a time because it just has me feed my starter and bake more often, which is something I like to do. So thank you for watching. I hope you learned something. I really hope you give this a try because it's sincerely an incredible bread you can very easily achieve at home. So like and subscribe. and enjoy life with some focaccia.